Y'all, Sherri Papini is on a media blitz trying to hawk this new book, and she sat down with the one, the only Annie Elise recently, and Annie got some of that tea for all of us. We're going to talk about it in today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. This is the sofa pillow. This is the sofa. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, well guess what? My name's still Paul. So y'all, today's video, we're revisiting the Sherri Papini case. I can't believe I'm saying that. She, like I said, has gone on a little, media tour. She has a new book out. She's trying to hawk it the whole 9 yards. Okay, so Annie Elise, 10 to life Annie, y'all know her probably. If you don't, you're about to. You're about to put her stuff down below or whatever. But she got an interview with her and she sat down with her and she talked. And so I want to talk about some of the highlights of that stuck out to me. Now, also I'll say this, I've met Annie very quickly at Crime Con in Nashville, I think it was. Super nice. I was walking by real quick and I didn't even realize it was her, but it was like her and maybe, somebody walking by talking. And very quickly I was like, oh my God, Annie, I love your channel. I was going somewhere, so I wasn't like trying to stop either, but she had the biggest smile. She was ready to stop and talk. And, it's kind of this quick interactions where like, oh, keep going, but I love your channel kind of thing. But immediate, just like great energy coming from her. So I was very impressed with her and I was very impressed with this interview. So let's talk very quickly if you're not familiar with who Sherri Papini is. Sherri Papini, many years ago, basically went on a little jog. She disappeared out jogging in the morning. 20 days later, she reappears, something like that, 2 days, whatever. Now she comes back, she has injury. She's talking about 2 Hispanic women kidnapped me. Now this all proves to be false. She is eventually charged with lying to federal agents. She signs a plea deal. Then does her time, gets out, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, that being said, she then comes out, I don't want to say in retaliation, but she comes out with her own docu-series, okay? And then this book, obviously. And she has changed the tune of her story. And she's basically saying, hey, I didn't lie. I just lied about who did the kidnap, like what really went on. And actually, yeah, my ex-boyfriend, James, he actually is the one that kidnapped me, not these 2 Hispanic women, but I was trying to like protect, whatever. So that's the quick nuts and bolts of it, okay? This is not meant to be a deep dive into that case. So let's just get into some of the highlights of the interview between Annie and Sherri. Annie's not shy about the stuff that she said. She's like, I've kind of found the docuseries performative, right? She's like, I think it might be a tactic for book sales, regaining custody of her children. And she's like, at first, I was like, I don't need to interview Sherri. But she was like, I also have questions. And so she ends up agreeing to do so. Okay, so that's how we end up where we're at. Now, on the alleged abduction, consent, memory, all that, she is asking Sherri point blank, did you consent to getting in the car with James? And Sherri's like, I have no memory of that. I was scared. And the next thing I remember is being in the car, high, then waking up in Southern California. And I'm just like, okay, we've heard a lot of these, if you've been following this case, we've heard this same stuff before, right? So it's just changed as to when she says it and whatnot. Anyways, so Annie will then ask, did you consent to being away for 3 weeks? Okay. And Sherri's like, nope, didn't consent to that at all. Annie will also ask, did you craft the story with James? Sherri says, no, I was terrified. I just wanted to get home. Now on the hard-hitting questions, which Annie asked a lot of them throughout, but I also felt like Annie was fair in the way of like, because I'm trying to imagine myself if I was sitting across from Sherri with the things that I've said and all that kind of stuff, and like, I would have to almost play along, right? Because you want the person to talk and then you want to be like, let's be in Sherri world. Let's listen to what Sherri's saying and give her the benefit of the doubt for a minute so that she'll tell her side. But then as she's telling her side, you can't help but have questions to it. So I felt like Annie did a very fair job in going along and being like, okay, so were you afraid in this moment? What was that like? So on and so forth. Now, as far as like the branding, the physical abuse, all that type of stuff, right? Annie will ask about the branding and the wood burning tool, okay? Now, she'll say, why that specific tool? Like, why Hobby Lobby, okay? Because it's so specific that it's odd. And Sherri's like, well, he may have remembered me talking about crafts. You know, he used other tools too. I didn't help him choose this, that, and the other. And one of the things that goes on with that is Sherri will be like, well, there's other injuries on me that he used other tools. Because one thing that Annie brings up is, and this is true, is she's just like, most guys, if they're thinking about like branding you, they're not going to think to go to Hobby Lobby and get that, right? They're gonna be thinking of other things. And so if you remember from the docuseries, Sherri's like, and you know it was planted, right? I mean, allegedly, whatever. Sherri's like in her closet at one point, she's like, and see, I have this wood burning kit that I used to do, but now it's too triggering. Now, Annie will also ask, did you direct James to buy the tool? And Sherri's like, no, right? Point blank, no, I didn't do that. Then Annie's like, well, do you think that the branding had a biblical meaning? And Sherri's like, no, you know, it doesn't make sense biblically. He's not like a Bible type person. I really don't know. It was a while before I could even look at it, so on and so forth. I mean, who knows, right? Then as far as that relationship with James goes, you know, and it's like, okay, well, describe the relationship with James. Now, throughout this, Sherri will say, this started off as an emotional affair. I was, you know, in a vulnerable place. I was isolated, but then things escalated. You know, she wants to end it. He pressured her. Now, remember, one of the things that she said in the docuseries, and then she kind of doubles down on this, is the whole thing about, you know, and I might say it again later, but I just want to kind of go with these thoughts right now while I have them on my mind, because I'm at that age where I'll forget them. So Sherri will sit here and talk about like, yeah, we were starting this thing off. It was this emotional affair, and then I essentially was like, I need to like end this, but you know, James didn't want to do that. So he's blowing my phone up. And I was supposed to meet him later or something like that, like to kind of end things. And then she's like, I went jogging, and she says to Annie at this part, she's like, you're a woman, you know, I mean, I wasn't put together. I was wearing a sports bra. My makeup wasn't done. My hair was all off. You know, she's like, I wasn't done up to meet him, right? I'm just like going jogging or whatever. And then he's at the end of the road. The whole thing happens. Okay. So this is the story she's kind of going with and sticking with now that she's saying, oh no, James like is the legit one who did this to me. But she'll also say that she thinks James is sadistic and that he suffers from mental illness. And then Annie's asking, obviously, like, well, then why did you reconnect, right? And she said, well, James contacted me first after his brother died. Now she'll also talk about, as far as like men go, whatnot, her ex-husband Keith, she said, had control over her life, very controlling man, like all this terrible stuff. She's stuck, and that James offered friendship and like this way out or whatever. Now then, as far as that whole false narrative about the two Hispanic women goes, Annie will ask her, why did you claim two Hispanic women abducted you? And Sherri's like, it was a breadcrumb. I wanted to protect James's identity. And she was like trying to like lead them back, because like she'll say at some point too later on, almost like this effect of like, there were these two women involved, like maybe a family member or something like that, but I didn't want to say that. So she was essentially trying to like dry snitch on the situation, if that makes sense. Okay, but it doesn't. And then Annie asked her the whole thing about like, was there a racial element to this, right? Because if you remember, and again, this is all alleged, that whole thing came out where people said that they found this letter from way back when about Sherri, and it was talking very negatively about like, I think the Hispanic community, I don't know if it was women specifically, but you know, it was very racial, right? And so then fast forward, she does this whole thing. This is a couple of Hispanic women take her, I mean, please, okay? And like a very kind of generic like Hispanic identity when she did those police sketches and whatnot. So, but about that, Sherri's like, no, there wasn't anything racial. I was triggered by anyone who resembled someone who was there, okay? Because she's basically saying his family and people like that were like watching over the situation. Like, so if he went and left and whatnot, that's how she was like held captive, right? Now, then Annie will ask about Keith, ex-husband. We talked about him. Sherri will say, now she says a lot of bad things about Keith, but she'll say, I was more afraid of Keith than the FBI. Prison was the safest I'd felt in 16 years. Now she claims that Keith was emotionally abusive, controlling, obsessed with whether she had an affair, not her well-being. So this whole time she's sitting here, she's just like, oh, he was sitting here like, he didn't, my injuries, my broken body, this and that. He wanted to catch me. He wanted to do this. He wanted to do that. He wanted to prove that I was lying and had an affair this whole time. He was very big on being in front of the cameras and this and that and da. Very fast fascinating. Now, as far as like the custody battle goes, okay, Sherri said that she sees her kids once a month, supervised. She's trying to fix that, whatever, but it is what it is. She said her son hasn't visited her in months. Now, she'll say about that she thinks that Keith is like parental alienating the kids and whatnot and not following court orders, and that he kind of skims around stuff and does this and does that and blah, 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 blah. And it is what it is, okay? Now, she'll also talk about her relationship with her sister, and then Annie asks about Sheila's involvement. And Sherri's like, there was an inappropriate closeness between Keith and Sheila. She claims that Sheila alienated the family and now hosts her kids despite past abuse. So, I mean, again, just do with that what you will. Now, she said that she kind of hints around like jealousy, manipulation from the sister, those type things, right? As far as like the legal fallout, evidence, this type of stuff or whatever, at one point, Annie's like, do you want James arrested? And Sherri's like, absolutely, absolutely. And then, like, so Sherri has like, I think it's the producer is there from the docuseries. And so sometimes Annie will ask a question and it's like the producer will be like, bah, 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 bah. So Sherri's team will say that there's a chain still in the wall, that witnesses James' cousin and wife admitted seeing her there. Police missteps and a plea deal clouded the case. And on that note, like one of the things that they're saying is, Annie's like, so why do you think that stuff is still there? Because like that right there, I'm like, think of how long ago this was, and like, you still think that there's chains on the wall? Don't you think that they would have maybe plastered over them at this point to hide that evidence? And they're like, well, when they showed us the pictures, they were there. I'm like, well, they might have been, right? But and that plea deal she'll bring up over and over. Remember, this is the plea deal. I did a video on it of Sherri signing off and saying, yep, this is the parts that I did. Now, in the docuseries, if you remember, Sherri's people, her lawyer, whoever, her was like, yeah, we had to go back and forth over and over to get the wording correct that I would agree to. And I'm like, it must be nice to get that kind of treatment in, the criminal justice system, right? So, but they'll go back and forth with that. And she still kind of like, doubles down in this situation, this interview with Annie, where she's just like, talking negatively about the plea deal. Okay, that's what we're getting at. So that part right there, now I have no doubt that these plea deals and whatnot, there's a certain manipulation that goes on with them of you're wanting out of the situation, you're going to sign this. It might not be the exact thing, but this is what you're going with. However, even a watered down version of what Sherri has presented is still like bad, right? So let's keep going. Now, Annie will ask like one of the obvious questions, like, why hasn't James been arrested? Okay, because that's my question too. I loved it. I was like, yes, girl, ask that question. So Sherri says that the FBI wanted to try to protect themselves and they couldn't deal with him. So she believes that they also led James's interview to frame her. Because if you remember, one of the things the FBI says something to the effect of like, if Sherri comes out and says that this or this, that you did this and you do that, we can't help you and blah, 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 blah. And so we'll talk about it in a minute, some of my speculation as to what and who did what. Bookmark that, we'll come back to it, okay? Now, her book, public reception, all this type of stuff, right? Numerous times throughout this interview, she'll be like, it's in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book. Okay, it is what it is, right? So she'll say, there's a deeper personal context of early trauma, her view of events, all that. It's titled Sherri Papini Doesn't Exist. Now, Annie will ask another huge thing. She'll be like, do you think that you harmed other survivors by signing a plea deal? And Sherri's like, no. The issue is how law enforcement interrogates abusive victims. Now, another huge one that Annie asks, I love this question, are you worried about defamation lawsuits? And Sherri's like, no, I'm very careful with my words. Everything I say is backed up. So she's saying she has receipts for all this stuff. Now, let's just talk about a few like random kind of standout moments or whatever that just come to mind that they're out of sequence, but here we go. So number one, what finally made her tell, her truth or whatever? And she's like, after the arrest, staying with Keith's sister, gave her safety and support. It's very interesting, the switching of like the sibling situation in this. It's very interesting. And especially if you watch all the stuff with his sister and their relationship, that part's interesting too. And then she's basically like, I finally was able to admit that I had an affair, but I was still abducted. Her whole claim is that she could never admit this because of Keith and like the custody or what he would do and her safety and so on and so forth. Now, another thing was like, what was Keith's reaction? And she was like, to that, because it's like, okay, well, this is the big bad thing, right? And again, she's just like, he didn't care. He only cared that I cheated, the whole 9 yards. Now, Annie will also be like, well, are you afraid now? She's like, no, I'm not afraid anymore. I've told my truth. So let's talk about just a few overall things now as well. So number one, the interview in general, like I said, it's clearly this is trying to sell her book. Now, here's the thing, put personal bias aside, all this type stuff. Obviously, Sherri is a very unemployable human being. Okay, we're talking about like almost in the same category as Casey Anthony, but what Sherri has more than Casey Anthony is, number one, she didn't kill her kid, right? Allegedly. Number two, because of that, there's and I don't know how to say it, like without lack of better terms, like a sideshow aspect to Sherri, where we see this story, she fakes his kidnapping, she does this, it's this bizarre thing, and now here we are saying I lied, it was actually James the whole time, right? And we're like, what? Like, it's such a level, and there's way more to this, y'all. Like the boyfriend who had the house and the whole 9 yards, okay? It's deep. So it's like a sideshow type thing, where with Casey Anthony, it's just different, right? It's like people just aren't really even interested in that. Okay, so that being said too, one of the things also that I still question and I'm very curious about is the defamation thing. I'm curious what y'all think about this dynamic too, because as I was watching her with Annie, these were some of the thoughts that went through my mind. Because again, Annie's asking, like, Annie's going to be closer to us, meaning the true crime community, whatever, and creators, than like, say, a polished docuseries. You see what I'm saying? Because Annie's like of this world where we're at over here. She's more intuitive, like the way we think. Like, what about intuitive? Well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And blah, 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 blah. Like, she's kind of asking the question we want to ask, right? As opposed to like this watered down, like, this is how Sherri is the victim. Kind of a thing. So when Sherri was talking, I was like, a lot of this seems like, number one, she's like, girls got to pay these bills. I'm just going to put my smile on and take my little book and go do these interviews and then go back home and kick my feet back on the sofa, right? Girl got to do what girl got to do. Okay, so there's that. Number two, I was like, it's almost like the more she speaks out, she's able to comb through the public reception and comment sections and harness in a new answer. So it's almost like when she says one thing about like the kidnapping, I'm making this part up. Well, why did you say it was too Hispanic? Well, because it was this. And then she can go read the comment sections. She's glued to Annie's comment section, right? I would be. I'm not, please. You'd have to get the jaws of life to get me out of there if I was her. I'd be all over that thing, right? Just crafting, okay? So totally get it. But that was kind of the energy I got. Okay, so then when you get into the whole thing about like, especially James, the things that she's saying where she's like, I can back all this up. Okay, so this is my question. Well, there's two things going on here. And Annie even brought this up too, where she was like, I think what James and the family were going through, the claim of Sherri, his family members watching all that, was that they were under the impression that he was saving her from a bad situation, as opposed to she's been kidnapped. And so then it was like, you're actually not in that level of trouble. And I will agree with Annie on this, where I think an element with James is that was going on, where it was I'm in trouble, I'm this, I'm that, I'm blah, 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 blah. Now, on that level, with her sitting here and saying, he's a sadomasochist, he's got mental health issues, he's got this, it makes me wonder if there is an element of truth in that, because there's almost this vibe where Sherri knows something that she knows he wouldn't want to be public. And I'm not saying it's criminal, but it could be embarrassing and not something that somebody wants put out there. So it could be as simple as this, and this is sofa speculation. This is not fact. This is just me thinking out loud. So in my opinion, I wonder if there's like an element where maybe they did have a little kinky thing going on. And she's like, we did do some of this little freaky stuff. And so I'm not lying when I say he's a little bit of a sadomasochist, because we did a little bit of that, stuff. You see where I'm going with that? Just about anyone these days, you could be like, they have some kind of mental thing going on and it be true, right? I mean, even a basic type thing. I have ADHD, or, something that's just like more normalized as opposed to psychopathy. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for her to say, I think he has mental health illness, I don't know his personal medical information, but let's say maybe he is diagnosed something, right? And she knows that. So she can say that because it's not defamation, it's true. And she's not saying a specific thing to put him out there. So I almost get that energy. Now, I questioned at one point if they were just holed up going at it for 3 weeks, right? This whole thing, because you have to remember, even if it was like this, hello, James, will you meet me? I'm in trouble. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just a tiny, frail little thing that needs your big, strong, masculine hands to come and save me. Something like that. And she gets up there. So even if he was doing that, it's almost like y'all didn't hook up. You were like ex whatever. I mean, come on. Then if you're sitting there watching TV talking about, yeah, girl, so the whole world is actually questioning you. I could then see her being like, look, we're going to have to pull something off next level if you don't want to get in trouble. And I don't want this to happen. She was probably like, I want to go back home. I don't want Keith to know. Like almost they cooked up a story and he probably did it. But then the part where it's like, he's going to brand her and do all that, that's so extreme. And so for her to turn around now and say it was against my will, knowing that this could bring stuff out, that's what I'm talking about. That's where I'm just like, I feel like there's a little few layers of truth in here and she is exploiting almost like a dare to, I dare you to say this, James, because I will bring out to light that you do this behind closed doors. You see what I'm saying? And then the family probably was like, and then probably too, there's this over here. We don't want to be all mixed up in this reality TV nonsense, okay? We're trying to put some damn food on the table, trying to go to work and come home, whatever we got going on. All this BS, no, we've already been drugged through it. And I think that's a huge part of it too, right? That they're just like, we don't, dudes, come on, right? Please, this is nonsense. But I question that because she's so confident with that it makes you wonder, why is she so confident with that part? What receipts does she have of all this that she's withholding? So anyways, that is it. Love the interview. Love Annie. Check it out. Watch the whole thing. It's like almost 2 hours. I think we're an hour and a half, something like that. Great interview. I hope she does more things like this. I thought she was very good at it. So anyways, what do you think? What do you think about the things that I asked specifically? Like, what do you think is the dynamic that she's so confident that she's got receipts? Like, I'm not getting any defamation. I'm not getting this or that. She's talking about like Keith doing that. Now, I'll say this. When she was like, Keith was so concerned about, he was more concerned about if I did this and I did that. I could see that because I'm also like, girl, he already caught you once. Even in the interview, you know, with Annie, she's like, well, yeah, James had to get the second burner phones because Keith caught us talking one time. So James had to get the burner phones originally for us to talk. And I'm like, and so you're wondering why he's trying to prove and being like, oh, you got caught? Maybe Keith is a controlling man. Maybe he is all that. Like, I don't know this man, right? I don't know Sherri either. So who knows? But, and again, I'm not trying to sit here and say, well, you gave somebody a reason so that they're justified to do horrible things to you. No, that's not true either, right? My viewpoint is if you do something shady, like you cheat or emotionally cheat or do something like this, and then your spouse is like kind of like looking over your shoulder when you're on the phone, sorry, not sorry, right? That's just how that goes. And that takes a long time to rebuild trust like that. If you're sitting there texting with people, doing emotional affairs, stuff like that, whatever. So this, and there's probably a lot of little things like this along the way that were like, oh, wait, this makes sense now. See what I'm saying? Because there's layer upon layer of lies. So anyways, that's it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you are still watching, I do appreciate it. While you're down there, drop off some little weird pillows and some little odd sofas for little Rosco, Bo and Luke, and you, the squad, so we can talk about Sherri and Tiffany and all the cases we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we gather down there in the comment section to do all that, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.